Weekly Spooky is brought to you by our generous supporters on Patreon. Get access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and more for as little as $1 a month when you go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on the Patreon link. Your support has gotten us to 100 episodes, so join up today and help us create another 100 and beyond. Head over to WeeklySpooky.com and join the Patreon.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my friends. It feels so good to be back. Unfortunately, it's not quite Wednesday. It's midday Thursday, but it's still time for a little spooky in your weekly. I apologize for the late appearance, but I got very sick after returning from my big trip last week, but I'm doing a lot better. You may notice my voice is just a bit more rich than usual. Well, assume that's a Valentine's Day gift. I'm going a little Barry White on you this week. And this week we have quite a doozy, all about if love really is never having to say, "You're sorry." But before we get to that, I just want to say, please take a moment on your favorite podcasting app, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whichever, and give us a rating. It really helps people discover the show. If you give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app, and yes, if you're listening on Spotify, in the last few months, they've added the ability to rate your favorite podcast. So give us 5 stars and help people discover the spooky they need on their weekly. And a humongous thank you to all the fine folks backing us on Patreon. We're having another banner month, and later this week, you can expect a very special exclusive video that documents my out-of-town writing retreat, but doesn't document my fresh battle with COVID-19. Sorry, but I'm going to keep that one to myself because we all love horror, but there's a little too much mucus involved in that one. So anyway, my friends, Valentine's Day is coming right up. So it's time for something with a little bit of heart. And maybe some other internal organs as well. So now, let's listen to the show. Lover's Lane by Morgan Moore. The headlights of a sedan cut through the dark and illuminated the scenery of the nearby area. Its engine faded into a sleep with the lights flickering off. 2 people, a boy and a girl, get out of the car. They meet up at the front and embrace, kissing each other passionately. After a minute, the duo pull their faces apart and smile at each other. "I love you, baby," the girl says. "I know. That's why we're here." The boy turned on a flashlight and shone it on a walkway that led up a hill. "Cherry Hill?" she said sensually. "AKA Lover's Lane," he responded. "I love you, Frankie." "I love you too, Annie." The couple kiss again romantically before grabbing a pair of blankets from the trunk of the car. Frankie extends his arm out and Annie wraps hers around it. With that, they walked away from the car and through the arch where the walkway started. As the couple walked along, the light from the flashlight bobbed up and down. Annie nuzzled her head against Frankie's shoulder and watched the beam of light move around. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees something that catches her attention. "What's that?" Annie asked. Frankie and Annie stop walking forward and move back a bit. Frankie shines the light around the area. When the beam hits what caught her attention, Annie tugs at his arm. That! She points to the object. The light stops where Annie points. What caught her attention was a flat and small tombstone that laid flush with the ground. Inscribed on it was, Marshall Presser, 1913 to 1962. Who's Marshall Presser? Annie wondered. You've never heard of Old Man Presser, the lyncher of Lover's Lane? Frankie asked in slight disbelief. Frankie, you know I only moved here a little while ago. I haven't had time to learn all the cavalry spooky lore, Annie told him. She wasn't wrong. Annie had only moved to cavalry a few months ago. Annie took to the town well, and the local boys had taken to her very well. Frankie caught her eye more than anybody else, though. He was cute. Not too smart, but cute. One of the star football players of the local college, and made her feel things that curled her toes to no end. Why else would she have come up to Lover's Lane multiple times with him? Want to hear about it? Frankie asked with a smirk. He held the beam of light under his chin to look scary as he looked down at his girl. Annie rolled her eyes. You really want to spend our time here telling ghost stories? I thought you wanted to do a little hanky-panky. I want to do that too, but getting scared makes your heart beat faster, gets your adrenaline going, might even get you in the mood more. Besides, when your heart beats faster, you breathe harder, and your boobs bounce when that happens, Frankie explained, his smirk turning devilish as he mentioned her breasts, his eyes drifting down to her bosom. She gasped in fake outrage and pulled her arm away with a small laugh. All right, enlighten me, she said, and started walking away. Frankie caught up quickly with Annie and took her hand. He planted a kiss on her forehead. Frankie started walking slowly, and Annie followed suit. Marshall Presser owned this whole area. He was actually the local executioner. Cavalry was a hanging town, and Presser was their hangman. His house was at the top of the hill, and the gallows weren't too far away. In fact, he used part of the hill as a cemetery for those he hung. Anyways, Presser was by most accounts a decent guy, save for it seemed to most folks as if he enjoyed executing people a little too much. That, and he had a bit of a temper. In particular, he didn't like the fact that kids would come up the hill and use the seclusion all these trees provided for, as you said, hanky-panky. To try and stop them, he started prowling the area at night with a noose made out of chicken wire. Scared the shit out of them, too. Well, one night, the old man was out prowling the area. He finds a car that's really rockin' and rollin'. Presser decides that's the perfect target and goes up to it. The windows are all fogged up, so he decides to really give them a scare and breaks a window. As you might guess, the couple start screaming their heads off, the girl especially. Presser peers in and finds that the girl is his daughter, his precious girl under some guy, exposed for all the world to see. Something snapped in the old man. He ripped open the door and garroted the boy, his throat slit from the wire and blood flowing from it like a stream. Then he pulled his daughter out and killed her too. After he finished, Presser had to dispose of the bodies, and that's where he had a stroke of pure genius. He buried the two in the makeshift cemetery he used for his executions. I mean, it was perfect. Nobody would ever expect anything was wrong if they saw him digging a new grave or two. So that's what he did. It didn't stop there, though. Like I said, something snapped when Presser saw his daughter as she was, and in the area where so many other kids went to fool around. Combined with the enjoyment he got from hanging people, the whole thing transformed Presser into a killer. After that night, people, teenagers and young adults especially, started vanishing into thin air. Nobody knew what was going on. Obviously, it was Presser killing off anybody and everybody who dared to go up to his property. Eventually, though, people caught on, and Presser was arrested before being hanged on his own hill. His wife ended up selling off the house, and it got torn down along with the cemetery a while later. Since then, the city's owned all of this. You can probably guess from the name, but people still use it as a place to get together and spend some quality time. Some say that isn't the only thing that hasn't changed. Supposedly, Presser cursed the hill right before he was hanged. You'll hear people say that he still stalks the area, a malevolent spirit still out to keep lovers off his land, slaughtering all who dare to do so. But that's a bunch of bullshit, a hokey little ghost story we like to tell to scare ourselves. Now, you know though. Frankie finished his story as the couple reached the top of the hill. Annie laid the blanket on the ground and the two settled in on it. "Wow, you certainly know how to get a girl ready to fool around," Annie told him sarcastically. "What can I say? I have a way with words," Frankie replied, slyly. "Words aren't the only thing you have a way with," she tells him as the couple embrace each other. "You ain't wrong." Frankie and Annie heavily kiss each other, keeping it up while slowly working in their hands and the rest of their bodies. The wind picked up and blanketed the two in a cool breeze. A clock tower rings off in the distance 12 times. Annie pulls her face away from her lover. "It's midnight," she tells him. "Happy Valentine's Day," Frankie tells Annie, sweetly. A car alarm blares out. "That's my car!" Frankie shouts. He gets up and starts running down the hill. Annie rushes after him, nearly tumbling down the hill doing so. When she reaches the bottom, her feet slide her around, bumping into Frankie's back. She pulls herself together and gets to his side. "What happened to the car?" she asks him. I don't know. The lights were flashing and the alarm went off, but it stopped once I got down here," Frankie explains. "Did you turn off the alarm with your keys?" she asks. "No, I think I left them with the rest of our stuff. Besides, we didn't lock it or set the alarm." The two walk towards the car and, using the flashlight, look it over. "I don't see any scratches," Annie says. "Nothing looks broken either. Who knows what happened? Cars are finicky," Frankie adds on. "So, back to our business then?" Annie asks in as unsubtle of a hint as possible. Frankie laughs and brings her into his arms. You know it. They kiss and hold each other tightly. The wind picks back up and is followed by the ground shaking violently. Annie and Frankie stop kissing and hold each other's hands tightly. A cracking sound shoots through the area, louder than any thunder either have ever heard. As suddenly as everything started, it stopped, sending the night into an eerie silence. It's broken by the sound of shuffling footsteps. Annie points the flashlight in their direction and screams in terror. Before her and Frankie are a horde of the undead. All of the resurrected are in their teens up to their mid-20s. The stench of must and decay permeated through the area, while the sounds of bones rattling and flesh, or what remained, peeling, rang in the ears of Annie and Frankie. What are they?" Annie cried out. This can't... Frankie tried to piece the words together, but couldn't. The scene was too fantastical, too nightmarish. The undead march towards the two, unwavering in their path as the wind picks up to near cyclonian strength. Frankie and Annie look at each other in desperation, unsure of what to do. Inside of them, a switch is flipped, and they nod in agreement. The couple turn around and start running back up the hill. Annie looks behind her as she runs. "Frankie!" she screams. Frankie looks back and sees the undead chasing after them. They return their attention to the hill, running against the ever-strengthening wind to get to the top. Once there, the pair ran farther and farther along it, closer and closer to where Presser's house once stood. "Annie, watch out!" Frankie calls suddenly. Annie stops to look at him briefly. When she returns her gaze forward, she sees why he had called for her. She stops and slides against the grass. Before her and Frankie is emptiness. The end of the hill. The only thing visible in the moonlight is the drop Annie nearly took. Frankie and Annie turned around to find the horde surrounding them. Their stench and the sound their bodies made drilled themselves into the two lovebirds, pushing them over the metaphorical edge. "What do you want? What even are you?" Annie screamed at them. To her and Frankie's surprise, they answered.
"We are those that Marshal Presser killed. Those who had their lives, their loves, cruelly taken away. Now, we are back."
But why?" Frankie asked in fear.
"Daddy didn't want us to have fun, to love, not on his precious land. But he is no more. So now we return on the anniversary of his death. If we can't embrace love here, nobody can,"
one horde member told them.
"You shall both die,"
another said. The horde continued to march towards the couple, circling them to keep them trapped. Frankie and Annie look around to find an opening of any kind, anything that would let them escape. Only the drop from the hill down below offered a guarantee from the horror in front of them. Annie looks over at Frankie. "Love," she says. Frankie grabs Annie by the wrist and throws her to the undead. Her screams intensify as they rush towards her and begin to devour her. In their frenzy to feed, Frankie sprints past them and back down the hill to his car. He scrambles inside and digs in his pockets for the key, but doesn't find it. Frankie tries the other side, then the back pockets, then the ones in his jacket. Each one comes up without his keys. Only his phone and wallet are with him. "Shit!" he shouts to himself. Frankie sits and thinks where they could have gone. The image of Annie being devoured by the horde flashes in his head. Then it hits him. The blanket. They're with the blanket. He sits in the car, thinking it over. If he went back, he would have to face those things. If he didn't, then it would be a very long walk home. Frankie had an idea. A smirk formed on his face as he grabbed his phone. Thank you, God, for AAA. Frankie unlocked his phone and pulled up the number for AAA. A sudden smack on the passenger side window startled him. The phone dropped from his grasp. It was Annie. "Oh my God!" Frankie exclaims. He unlocks the door and she slides inside. "How? What? I'm sorry, babe," he says. "It's all right, love. You did what you had to do to live," Annie says. "Oh, Annie, I love you," Frankie cries and embraces her in a giant hug. Annie strokes the back of Frankie's head. As they continue to hug, Frankie begins to smell something rotten on her. He notices that her body is cold, ice cold. Frankie pulls away some and looks on in horror at Annie. Her face was half eaten away, and chunks of her clothes and skin were torn off, her eyes a dark and blood red. He had been too excited to see her that he hadn't noticed what she'd looked like, but now he couldn't escape it. She was no longer Annie, the girl he loved. She was this undead hellspawn. Frankie whipped around to flee from the car, but it was stopped almost instantly as Annie dug her nails into his shoulders and pulled him down. She let out a shriek and threw her head down, sinking her teeth into his throat. Annie shook her head back and forth as her teeth sank deeper and deeper into Frankie's flesh, blood gurgling out of his throat and out of her mouth. She then ripped her mouth away, tearing off the majority of his flesh and causing blood to spray up onto the ceiling, ending Frankie's life. Annie looked down at his corpse and smiled with what was left of her face. "Happy Valentine's Day, love." Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed that story. I know, but it's better late than never, because I would never leave you hanging. And I gotta say, even though I'm a little under the weather, I am fine, by the way. I'll be just fine. Even though I'm a little under the weather, it felt so good to get back in this chair and back behind this microphone and bring you something scary for your week. And I'll be back next Wednesday with a very scary, very snowy horror story. Be sure to be subscribed so you don't miss next week's episode. And if you want to go just one step beyond subscribing and leaving a review, you can go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on Store. Get some rad Weekly Spooky merchandise just for you. Or you can click on Patreon and become one of our patrons. The folks who really help make this show happen every single week with their monthly contribution of as little as $1 a month. It makes a huge difference. We're at 84 backers. I want to see us make it to 100, so please, if you're able, help us out. It really means a lot. And speaking of Patreon, I want to take a moment to thank our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay a little extra to hear their names read on the show by my silky voice. Those are Christopher Sullivan, Gino Lyons, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, Jeff and George Hilton, Craig Cohen, and Kevin Fry. Thank you all so much for helping me make this show every week. And you can join them by just going to weeklyspooky.com and clicking on Patreon. Well, my friends, it's time for me to go and rest because I'm not quite fully recovered yet, but I promise you, next Wednesday, I'll be here with bells on, figuratively, not literally because that would get distracting, to bring you a brand new scary tale. So until then, my friends, for myself, for my executive producer Rob Fields, for my producer Dan Wilder, and my composer Ray Mattis, I will talk at you next week. And I didn't cough once. Ha!
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.